This is Wheel Bearings. I'm Dan Roth from Forbes.
I'm Sam Abu-Al-Samad from Navigant Research.
And I'm Rebecca Linland from Rebecca Drives.
All right. Well, are you guys all fully disinfected and not seeing anybody? Like, it's been great the last couple of weeks because basically it was just like keep doing what you do because you don't like people. Don't go out anywhere. Don't talk to people. Don't see anyone.
Every introvert's dream.
Fortunately, I live in a nice suburban neighborhood, so there's lots of room, so I go out and walk Daisy a couple times every day. And, I see I see my neighbors walking their dogs, and it's great because, the dog leash length, if we let the dogs get, close to each other, greet each other, then we're just the right distance apart from each other to enforce social distancing. So it's perfect.
Excellent. Yeah, the dog. So the kids have been going so stir crazy. I kick him out into the backyard, and my son's kicking around a football for a while and stuff. And the dog goes out as the medieval alarm system. It's excellent. I just put him out there, and then he alerts anytime somebody walks by. It's great.
So I actually got back from Vegas. We left Vegas on Saturday, and of course, everything closed down last night. And so we were sort of waiting to see what would happen, but everything went dark yesterday. So we checked that out. Yeah.
It's pretty wild. We'll pray for you, by the way. Yeah. I mean, I don't pray, but we'll pray for you.
It was very interesting being there and seeing, most of the people that showed up for this huge trade show that I was helping my brother with, they're in the construction industry. It's only 3 years. And so it's really people, that are buying these huge tractors and buying this heavy equipment and stuff. And, for the most part, it was one of those, like, if you're there, you're pretty, I don't want to say cavalier because people were careful. But it was very interesting. And then, the dominoes just started falling as we were there, and they ended up closing the show half a day early. But yeah, it was, we got out of Vegas just in time.
Wow. Well, we're glad that you're back because you're able to be on the show. It's kind of an amazing time that we're all sort of living through. So we'll see where it winds up. We can talk about the cars we've been driving. I fully expect that at some point they're going to turn off the tap, at least for a while, of cars to drive. They've shut down the factories for now. So we'll see how that plays out.
I think we're so fortunate though that provided the excellent agencies that do send fleet management agencies that do send us cars, when you think about travel writers and stuff, everyone, or restaurant. One of my good friends is a restaurant critic, and obviously she has to figure out something else. And for the travel blogs, they really, there's an opportunity to actually look around your own hometown and see what sites are there or what's close to homes, but it definitely requires reimagining. So we're at least fortunate that we can keep reviewing cars as long as they keep delivering them.
Yeah. I mean, if you're an Instagram influencer right now, you're basically screwed.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
It's been really, I don't want to belabor the point, but it's been amazing in some ways to watch the air quality improvement. The way, I'm sure there's a lot of industries that are struggling with this. There's people within my own company that are struggling with working remote, but a lot of us, it's not a big deal. I mean, we're doing video production remote, and we're sending things around across a VPN and stuff like that. Sometimes you have to wait a little bit, but we're all pretty much proving that commuting to the office is not entirely necessary.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be one of the fascinating things to watch. Earlier this afternoon, my colleagues and I we had a call. We were reviewing our overall vehicle sales forecast, looking at our forecast model, and making some updates to it. And particularly in light of what's going on both with the pandemic and also with oil prices crashing in the past week. With this disagreement between the Saudis and the Russians. West Texas intermediate crude today was down to $21 a barrel.
We had an earthquake too in Utah. That was
yes, that was just to add. Where are the locusts?
So they're coming. What I was going to get to was, when we were talking about how we need to update our forecast, our sales forecast. There's obviously a lot of uncertainty, but with so many people working from home now, obviously there's a huge number of jobs that you can't work remotely. But there are certainly hundreds of thousands, probably millions of workers in this country that work in offices that many of them, are now working at home for the first time. And, once companies see this in action for a period of time, I have a feeling that, a lot of companies are going to look at how this works out. And if it works out okay, if it's manageable, that a lot of these people going forward may end up at least part of the week, maybe not going into the office 5 days a week, but working at least a few days a week from home, perhaps on a permanent basis. And if that happens, now all of a sudden you've got a lot fewer people commuting, and so that could have a positive impact both on air quality, but also on congestion and safety. But then, there's all kinds of cascading effects from that because, all of a sudden, if companies don't need as much office space,
right,
that has an impact on the real estate market, the commercial real estate market. And then that cascades into, the businesses that support office workers, restaurants and bars and dry cleaners and, all this other stuff. So it's, it could have a significant, perhaps permanent impact, on the economy and also on vehicle sales.
Right. And not necessarily good either. It's been fascinating.
Some aspects of it are good, but
some are good. I really liked that when I was at the office last week, it was amazing to commute because there was no traffic.
Well, but also on the flip side too, when you talk about that commercial space use, you could actually see an increase in things like restaurants going into these places. Because if you've been home all day, maybe you do want to go out then in the evening, and you're using money differently. You're living and working very differently than if you like here in Connecticut where people take the train in, and you're saving. Like I know, one of my friends, he usually is on the 7 a.m. train and, goes into the city, works for a big bank, and gets home at 7:30 at night. And all of a sudden he's walking to his office, in another part of his house, working there all day. And when he's done, he walks downstairs and voila, that's his commute, Yeah. And it's the amount of time that he's saving, that he's getting back, I should say.
Right.
It's just phenomenal.
I'm getting 3 hours a day back into my schedule. And I'm better rested.
Right.
I'm in a better frame of mind. And I was looking at my timesheet because I'm filling in my hours every day. So most days I put in a solid 8.5, 9 hour day, usually about 8.5. And my timesheet for the last couple of days was I think Monday it was a 10.5 hour day. Yesterday it was 9.5, and it was no big deal. Okay, fine. Stuff had to get done, but I was home. I started earlier. I worked until 8 o'clock. I took breaks for things and stuff. It gets here, but it's just a much better environment if you can do it. And so I think the companies are going to see that oh, by the way, these people are more productive and less cranky.
Right. But to Sam's point, how does this affect the vehicle market? In some ways, suddenly maybe you see a household that has an SUV and a convertible, right? Because now all of a sudden you're I don't need a car to get to and from the train station. I need a car to get me out of the house and go for a drive and enjoy the drive all of a sudden. Yeah. It's just a really different attitude when you work from home. And even as you say, even if you do it a couple of times a week, suddenly you don't have that, that hamster wheel effect on your life, and you're getting so much time back. It's phenomenal.
I do worry.
Yeah.
Oh, I do worry about the restaurants just because,
No, absolutely. I mean, the lunch crowd, right?
Well,
Suddenly it's a
to
very different.
Rebecca's point, though, maybe if people are working from home, like if you
Local
live in Connecticut and commute into Manhattan, it may well hurt a lot of restaurants in Manhattan,
right?
But on the other hand, it could benefit restaurants that are local to where you live. So you might see a shift. And it's funny. As you were speaking, I pulled up Google Maps. Pulled up San Francisco on Google Maps and looked at the traffic. So right now as we record, it's 4 p.m. in San Francisco, and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, anywhere in the Bay Area, it's clogged normally. And it's showing green lines everywhere. Light traffic in this area much faster than usual.
Yep.
Well, yeah, Boston was the same way. I just pulled up. Right. LA is the same way.
Yeah.
LA. I mean, it's insane. And
air quality in LA. I saw somebody tweeted something about the air quality in LA, and like particulate emissions were like zero. And
it's incredible.
One or two of the parks.
And you know what? I think that this is an opportunity to find a balance. So when we think about people that live and work in Manhattan, those that, are local and live and work in the city, they're ones that you say, you know what, they have the possibility to return to normal, to go into the city. It's the people that are commuting, and there are a lot of them, as we see when we notice this traffic. So again, it's sort of just rethinking the work day and rethinking how we work. So what I was going to say earlier, the funny thing about my friend who isn't commuting anymore is that the bank that he works for, he had asked if he could work from home like once a week. And they said, oh no, we're not licensed in Connecticut, so you can't work from home.
That doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. Suddenly that's disappeared. That has completely disappeared.
Nonsense.
Yes, it was nonsense. And he knew it at the time, but it was one of those like battles you're just not going to win. Yeah. And so of course now, and I just, I think it's just, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here. We just have to focus on that as opposed to focusing on the threat. Where's the opportunity? I was reading something about a Lincoln dealership, that's delivering cars. There's a Kia dealer up in Seattle who sold a Sedona for $40,000 by going to the person's house and dropping it off for them.
But see, like this is all stuff that like used to happen too. Like the car dealer in town used to deliver the car to you.
Yeah,
you used to be able to get groceries delivered,
right, and certainly milk, right?
Yeah. So it's just it's interesting, and like yes, maybe the like my local suburban restaurants will be okay, but because we're sprawled out, like I don't know, like it's I'm nervous in some ways, and I worry about people who really don't have a choice and they work in the service sector. It's great for some of us. It's going to suck for others.
Yeah, it is.
Later this year, it's going to be really bad there's going to be a lot of your favorite restaurants are probably never going to reopen.
Yeah.
Just because, they can't get by, even if they're, a lot of restaurants right now are doing, takeout and delivery, but that's not going to be enough to sustain them. And a lot of others, they just had to close completely, and many of them probably will never reopen. And that's unfortunate. And, a lot of other small and medium-sized businesses are going to be in the same position. The second half of this year, we're probably going to be in a significant recession. And, we're probably going to see a significant drop in GDP and vehicle sales and everything.
Oh, vehicle sales are poised already. Already GM is offering an 84-month 0% interest loan.
Well, now, right. I mean, it will be. And especially for people that are, that are putting off a purchase. Now, we do still have leases. So those people that will lease will have to buy. And there's also, again, always those people that look at the opportunities. Maybe I can get a better deal, but I'm not saying that it's going to be all rosy by any stretch,
no,
but it's, and I mean, the positive here is that we have come from a period of economic growth. And so, we aren't starting this on our knees, which is good.
I mean, we've had overall economic growth, but, for, the lower and middle income sectors, they have not actually made much real progress in the past 10 years. Really over the last 40 years, median incomes in this country have been basically stagnant.
Thanks, St. Ronnie. Okay, sorry.
So, there's a lot of people, large proportion of the population that has very little, if any, savings.
I realize that $400 is the average. No, I recognize
they're going to be struggling for a while.
Yeah. $400.
Well, and I was trying to game this out in my head too, is the ones who are going to be able to weather it the best are maybe not necessarily your favorites. It's the large corporations with available credit lines to draw down that are going to be able to take a shorter term financial hit and continue to pay and retain their workers. And, businesses without that kind of availability of credit or just low margin businesses are going to have a much tougher time. So your favorite
or the ones that spent 96% of their cash flow over the last decade on stock buybacks.
Airlines can kiss my ass. They can go bankrupt, and somebody can buy them out of the ashes and make a real business. I mean, some of the shenanigans that have been going on have gotten us here to the point where, and it's really, I don't want to get very political, but it's difficult to listen to talk about bailouts, but not have it go where it needs to go. Like, we need to bail out those lower and middle income people, not the corporations.
Well, but they are talking about that, though. That is very much on the table.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, sort of like.
And again, I think we don't want to get too political, but it is both. They are talking about. It's not just focused on the corporations. They are talking about bailing out.
It seems very heavily, and I haven't paid attention today.
And, sending everybody a check for $1,000
that's
not going to go very far if this, if we're locked down for 3 months or 4 months or 6 months.
What I was going to say was, if you do bail out the corporations, that should in turn save some jobs.
It should. It depends on how it's done. Like, you think about the bailouts in 2008, like, those were pretty good. Nobody was super happy with them on any of the sides. They had to happen and they had to happen the way they had to happen to maintain jobs, really. Like, there's, again, some people got parachutes and stuff, and there's things to be criticized there. But if we're going to do the same kind of thing again, I really think that things like buybacks and board seats and a lot of things that are important to the sensible running of a company that will wind up not leaving its workers who can least afford it indigent will be very important to those bailouts. It should be very important to those bailouts. So.
All right, on politics this week. We started this off by we're about to talk about what we were driving.
Well, clearly we're driving our listeners away. You know what, Rebecca? You haven't. We sort of Frankenstein the last one together, so it's been a while since we've been on together. Why don't you tell us about the Hyundai Venue?
Oh my gosh, this thing was just such a cute, fun little car. I loved it. So I had it, it is a couple weeks ago now. And, it's just a happy, zippy little car. It's not going to be the most exciting thing to drive. It doesn't, it's not the most exciting acceleration, but it's just a happy little car. So I had the denim version, which is, the base is the SE, which starts at $16,350. The one that I had that goes to SEL, and then denim is the top trim. So that one starts at $21,050, which is, I think a fantastic price. It's got this exclusive denim color. It looks like a nice pair of jeans, both inside and out. And then the roof is white, which is super cute. And then it's got, it doesn't have full leather seats, but that was okay because it has this combo seats. So the one that I had is I had a 1.6 liter engine, 4-cylinder, 121 horsepower, which again is not fantastic. I definitely felt like it was a little bit struggling a little bit on some of the more aggressive hills that are on the Merritt Parkway around here, which can get pretty steep. But for the most part, for running around town, it was just fun. It was just delightful.
Aren't small cars the best?
It was. And, my nephew, Jake, he came out and did a little Instagram video with me, which I'm actually going to send to you to edit for me.
Okay.
But, he really, really liked it. He's 25 and he was like, this is just the perfect size, the shape of it. He can throw all of his crap in there. It's quite square. It's sort of like it's almost, to me, it was very similar to the feeling that I had in the Kia Soul, which is again, such a cute little car, but I don't know. I just, it's just a happy little car. And I thought for the price point, it's fantastic. The only downside we were super bummed about is that there's no sunroof in the Denim. You can only get the sunroof and the SEL, which I thought was really kind of strange. It's not even an option. Like you can't even add it. And so I'm not sure what that logic was, but I loved it.
It may have something to do, because it's got that two-tone finish with the contrasting roof color. It may have been just a little too complicated to manage, doing that two-tone paint with, having the hole in the roof.
Okay. He looked into getting one installed. It was going to be like $1,300 or $1,400. But so that would be the reason then, you think, the paint job?
That would be my guess.
Okay.
If it's available in the SEL and not in the Denim, it may have just been a case of manufacturing complexity.
Mm.
Or
that makes
just
sense.
Keeping the cost down is the other thing I come up with.
That's possible too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But
go ahead.
Have you guys driven it?
I did have a chance for a brief drive in the venue last November when Hyundai was doing an event here at their tech center, a pre-LA backgrounder, and I got a chance to spend about 20 minutes driving it around, and I liked it a lot. I mean, I think it's a really nice size. It's a relatively small footprint, but it's still fairly roomy inside. And it's like a lot of these entry level compact crossovers that we started to see pop up in the last couple of years, like the Nissan Kicks and this one, and there's a few others that they give it kind of a cool look. It drives pretty well. It's obviously not a sports car. It's got a beam axle in the back. But the ride quality is still decent. It's quite well equipped. You get even on the base SE. You get a decent audio system, and with a touchscreen system that's got Android Auto and CarPlay support. So you're not actually sacrificing all that much. Now, granted, for somebody, first time buyer, even 18,000 delivered, for the base SE, is not cheap, but by today's standards, it's quite affordable, and if you can get a loan, you can probably get some pretty, reasonable payments on that. So it's, I think it's a very practical vehicle. It comes standard with lane keeping assist and forward collision avoidance and
there were
like that.
Good safety things on it. That I personally was kind of impressed with. I mean, I guess again for that price point. Now the SE doesn't have like blind spot warning, rear cross traffic alert, but you can add that for $1,100 to the SEL, and the Denim does have it standard. And so,
it's there's a lot of value. You're getting a lot for your money.
Yeah, there was a lot of value. And I like the fact that, they make that SE available at $16,000. It's not a lot of money at all, but you do get into a brand new vehicle. And as you say, Sam, it's got some really nice features to it.
And Hyundai's got great warranties and, great quality.
Right. Great quality. And, and then you can, the trim walk was really nice because then you could add, you can spend a few $1,000s if your budget allows. And, what does that come out to? About $100 more a month, to get, the fully equipped, a really nice looking either SEL or denim. And, it was super easy to get in and out of. It's got, it does have the drive modes to it, and so you can switch it into a drive mode for snow because it does not offer all-wheel drive. But yeah, again, it's just the features in it. I just thought it was a really, really good value, and it's super fun to drive and zip around town in and such. It's, you're not going to take it on long road trips by any means, but you can
But even if you did, it probably, it wouldn't be a terrible place to spend a few hours.
No, not a few hours is fine. Like I was actually, I would have loved to have driven it, like up to Boston, which is like a 3-hour drive and back or something. But for the time I spent in it, probably an hour in total each way. It was good. It was just a lot of fun. As you say, it's got, a 5-year, 60,000-mile warranty. It's got a 10-year, 100,000 powertrain limited. And they've done a really nice job with it. I think it's just a lot of fun. It makes me smile. It makes me happy. And it's one of those.
And
it was one of those.
32 miles per gallon combined.
Right. Well, and it's just a good all around little guy. I liked it.
Yeah. Well, so and they speak my language when it's stuff like beam axles, and I don't say that in jest. Like, I like small cheap cars, especially when they're done well. So they put the money into the features, into the stuff that matters a lot more to most drivers. And I haven't driven the Venue, but I've driven the Kia Rio, which is related. And I remember really liking that car. It didn't seem cheap. It was not expensive, but the way it was outfitted, the way it was put together, and the just the value you get, the material choices was good. Then that's sort of their shtick lately, right? Is Hyundai and Kia both?
Yes, it is. I mean, I think that they are so consistent in surprising and delighting a buyer with their features and their amenities and the quality and the fit and the finish and all these things. Think of how many times we've driven a Hyundai or a Kia and been really impressed. And a friend of mine just bought a Telluride because I told her, I was like, you got to go, and if you want one, you got to go and get one because there are just not that many around, and they're selling really quickly. And she absolutely loves it. And it's just, they're just doing a really good job.
Yeah, I will agree with that. So let's jump over to sort of small, cheap SUVs still. Well, small SUVs. Sam,
not so much on the cheap.
Yeah, I think you mentioned this the last time we recorded a podcast. You were in the Rogue Sport, and we didn't talk about it that much, but you mentioned the price.
Yeah, so Nissan, like Hyundai and increasingly most automakers, is kind of going two paths with their small crossovers. So they've got the entry level models like the Venue and the Kicks, and then they've got a step up model, which in the case of Nissan is the Rogue Sport, which looks a lot like the bigger Rogue.
Fools me all
smaller.
The time.
Yeah, it's just smaller. And they introduced this in the U.S. market a couple years ago. They had it in Europe for some time, where it was sold as the Qashqai, but here it's the Rogue Sport, and it's pretty much starts where the Kicks leaves off, or the Venue and other comparable models. So the starting price for the Rogue Sport S front wheel drive is $23,000. The one I had was the SL, the top end model with all wheel drive. And it came, including destination charges, $33,860, which
is
that's
a little
too
steep.
Much money. No, that's too much money.
Yeah. I mean, granted, you can get one in the mid 20s, without, it's not that hard. But, for this top end model, it, almost $34,000, granted, it's a lot nicer interior than a Kicks or a Venue for that matter. It had leather seats and nicely finished materials on the dashboard and everything. Heated seats and steering wheel and all that good stuff. Lots of good toys to play with. And it even included things like ProPilot Assist. So you have it's still a hands-on, but it's lane centering, adaptive cruise control system, which they've now got on much of the Nissan lineup, available at least as an option on much of the Nissan lineup. And unlike the Nissan systems that just have the standard adaptive cruise control without ProPilot, all those, and I complained about this, a couple of weeks ago when I think with the Sentra when I was driving it, or maybe it was the Versa. Sorry, I haven't driven the Sentra yet, but the Versa and also with the Armada, when you use the adaptive cruise control, it's a full stop and go system, literally stop and go. So when you're in traffic, it'll bring the vehicle to a complete stop. But then once it stops, it releases the brakes. So if you don't put your foot on the brake pedal, it'll start to creep again.
We had that.
To let you know.
Sam, you and I ran into that when we were on the Versa launch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I remember that because I think I was driving.
Yeah. Because I think I pointed out to you.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what's
Rebecca,
happening?
What's going on? So anyway, when you get ProPilot though, it doesn't do that. It does actually keep the brakes applied. So when you come to a stop, it'll hold the brakes until you're ready to go again. It's the Rogue Sport, nice looking little crossover. A little bit bigger than the Kicks or the Venue, but not by much. I mean, it's within a couple inches. Lots of features inside. It's decently roomy, comfortable, rides pretty well. It's got the same 2-liter 4-cylinder and CVT transmission that you'll find in the Versa and in a bunch of other Nissan vehicles. So it's 141 horsepower. I think it's adequate performance. I wouldn't complain about the performance as as a basic vehicle, but it seemed like, especially in this car, especially at this price point, it was I wouldn't say it was particularly noisier than it was in the Sentra or the Versa. I mean, but the Versa was a $21,000 car. This is half again as much. And at this price point, I expect a powertrain that's a little more refined than this. It was kind of noisy, not rough, but you could tell it was working. And obviously, this is also a heavier car than the Versa, or a heavier vehicle than the Versa, because it's got all-wheel drive. It's a crossover. It's taller, and so I'd say the powertrain was a less pleasant, significantly less pleasant experience. Or not as well suited to the price point as it was in the Versa.
Yeah, that's my issue with any of these vehicles, is that when you get into that $33,000 range, what else is available? What
All
else can you
kinds of
buy
stuff.
for that?
You
Exactly.
can buy a nice Accord.
And that's the thing.
Or a Mazda CX-30.
Or a Mazda CX-30. And so that's the issue that I have with some of these. It's not that we're not willing to pay for value or that we're not willing to pay for features. It's just that then you look and say, but wait a minute, what else, what other vehicle could I get for that amount of money?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. We've talked about this before. We always try to, when we talk about these vehicles, we try to put them in the context of, who's the customer, how much are you paying for this thing, and what are you getting for the money you're paying? For a less expensive vehicle, I think it's reasonable for anybody to expect to make a few sacrifices, or to give up, certain amount of refinement, that you're going to pay a lot more. That in a more expensive vehicle, you're going to get that extra refinement. And in this case, for the most part, it's really nice. I didn't really have any other significant complaints about the Rogue Sport, but the powertrain definitely seemed unrefined for this this price point relative to, I guess even a base Rogue Sport, which has the same engine in it. They only have this one powertrain combination. And at 23,000, I'd be fine with it. But at 33,000, yeah, or 34,000, now I'd be second guessing. If I'm going to pay this much money, I want something that behaves a little better. And so that's my prime complaint about this. Other than that, the rest of it was fine. The seats are comfortable. It's got, reasonable amount of cargo space in the back. For a smaller crossover, I think it's, it can handle 4 adults, fairly easily. So it's, and, with ProPilot, that works reasonably well. It's not the best such system out there, but it works fine. So I think, if only it had a better powertrain or maybe some more sound deadening material or something, then I'd be much more interested in recommending it. And, the other thing too is, at this same price point, mentioned the CX-30, the CX-30 does have a more refined powertrain that also has like 45 more horsepower than this one does.
Yeah.
So,
wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That makes it that really makes a huge difference then.
I mean, at 33K though, like you could even go up a size if that's what you wanted to do. I know size is not always what is on buyers' minds, but
size matters.
I was trying to get away from that.
Well, it does matter, but not always necessarily bigger. And it depends. If you live, if you're commuting into an urban environment, if you need something with a smaller footprint that's easier to park, then a smaller vehicle like this, may actually be the preferred choice.
Yeah.
So it all depends on what your use case is.
But I mean, like 33K also, like, and if you're looking for something small, you could even get into a Mini. I'm pretty sure for 33K. Not, I mean,
that's true.
Wouldn't be.
Yeah, no, you could.
Probably wouldn't be as reliable, but
yeah.
but I think that's Sam's whole point is that it isn't actually about the size. If this is the right size for you, then you do expect something though that has a level of luxury and refinement that for $33,000.
Yeah.
Or, if that's the price point you want and you're willing to go a little bit bigger, you could step into something like a CX-5,
RAV4,
or RAV4, or, an Escape, or any number, a CRV, or any number of other vehicles that are a size class up from this, at that same price point.
Well, I bet you could get into an actual Rogue for that price.
Well, actually, you could, yeah. Let me see. I think the Rogue starts at 25,000 for the S. So you could get an all-wheel drive Rogue, for this same price point, like an SV.
Yeah, so I mean, it depends.
You can get a Rogue SV, the mid-level Rogue for 28 grand with all-wheel drive.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Or even the SL. You can get an all-wheel drive SL, which is the top end Rogue, for $33,000.
But it doesn't cost them any less to build the Rogue Sport than it does the Rogue.
That's true. Yeah.
So I can understand why it's not necessarily a reasonable expectation that it should be cheaper,
right.
But
and especially, since you're getting, you have access to most of the same features. And there's a lot of stuff that you get in this that you can't get in a Kicks or a Venue or, the lower end crossovers. So, if you want things like ProPilot, if you want things like leather seats or heated seats, or a Bose audio system, those things are only available when you step up to one of these other ones.
So it's a very competitive market and it's getting more and more stratified. So,
yeah. Well, and granted, the Rogue and the Rogue Sport, are both reaching the end of their life cycle. I would expect, that within the next 12 months, we'll see a next generation Rogue Sport. We were actually supposed to see the new Rogue, the 2021 Rogue, which was redesigned at the New York Auto Show, which also has been canceled or postponed till August. And they were actually supposed to do a backgrounder here in Detroit in a couple of weeks, but that's been postponed until an indeterminate date, until they figure out when they can actually gather some people together. So it's, we will be seeing next generation models of these, which, hopefully, will be improved in a number of ways. I think, like I said, to me, the main thing that I would like to see improved at this price point is the powertrain. The rest of it, I think, is perfectly acceptable. Well,
all right. Let's move on from the Rogue, which was too much money, to the BMW 2020. I mean, the 2020 BMW M340i, which is also too much money. Just more too much money.
So the M340i. I think you said three. Did you say 320?
I should have said M340. If I didn't, I'm sorry.
So, so this is the new generation 3 Series, which we don't yet have, a true M version of yet. We don't have a new M3 or M4. Those are coming later this year, I think. But the M340 is kind of that in-between model. It's the high end of the mainstream 3 Series.
It's lineup. More than anybody really needs.
That's true. Yeah. I think that's very true.
It's not about need.
That's true. That's true. And we shouldn't. Right. Far be it from me to dictate what somebody else needs. I'm just saying, like, it's more than I, as a driving enthusiast, actually needs. How's that? I'll just personalize it. Yeah. You do what you want with your money.
Yeah. So let me say first, BMW inline 6-cylinder engines are among my favorite engines of all time. I love BMW 6-cylinders. They're great engines. They feel great. They sound great. They've always had lots of torque. They're very smooth, but they have this really nice mechanical sound to them that I really appreciate. And so, the version that's in this particular, in the M340i, has 384 horsepower.
That's bonkers.
Yeah.
That's a lot of horsepower.
Yeah. 382 horsepower and 369 foot-pounds of torque, from 1800 to 5000 RPM. So, I mean, it's got a nice flat torque curve, it's fantastic. Basically you just squeeze the pedal at any time and it pulls. The one I had was all-wheel drive. I think I would probably, if I was choosing one for myself, I'd probably go with the rear-wheel drive, the base rear-wheel drive version, because it's going to be lighter. And, I like at this kind of power level, I like, having rear-wheel drive as opposed to all-wheel drive, at least most of the year. Unfortunately, it's only available with an 8-speed automatic now. You can't get a manual transmission in here anymore. The last 3 Series I drove a couple years back was a 340i, not an M340i, but just a regular 340i. And I think that one had about 350 horsepower at the time. And it had a 6-speed manual, and it was so nice with that 6-speed manual. You can't get that anymore because, 3, 4, maybe 5 people bottom.
It's so dull with the automatic. Yeah. I didn't drive an M. I think the only current version of the current 3 Series I've driven is a 320. But that was a boring car.
This is a lot less boring. I would not call it boring, but it's not quite the same without a manual transmission. I definitely appreciate having a stick, and I've always liked BMW manuals. They've always done a lovely job with their manual transmissions. As automatics go, it's not a bad one, but it's an automatic.
Is it a PD? Is it a dual clutch?
No, it's just a standard, torque converter, planetary gear automatic.
Yeah, that's too bad. I mean, the M Series really does need to have a manual.
I agree. Okay. And I think the M3 and M4 will have a manual available, but not the M340. There's that. In terms of the way it looks, I like the size of this one. Most of the design is a little more toned down from the previous generation. The surfaces are a little smoother. There's a little less contouring, a little less, character lines, or they're more blended in, which I think, makes it a little bit duller to look at. I do like the front end of this one. Unlike some other recent BMWs, while the grill, the twin kidney grill has gotten a little bigger, it's mostly bigger in width. It's still at a reasonable height. It hasn't gotten this ridiculously large grill on it. And the M3 and M4, or at least the M4, is going to have this big, massive, tall grill, full height grill on it, from what we've seen from spy photos.
How do you feel about that? Let's get ourselves off track. How do you feel about that grill?
I hate it.
Really?
I think it looks ridiculous. I like the version that's on this car much better than what's on what we've seen on the M4.
Okay.
I just think it's too much. I don't like it. What can I say?
It's interesting to see how passionate people get about things like that. It's like,
I mean, aesthetics are, a very personal thing, very personal choice. I mean, everybody's got their own visual taste.
That's true.
I mean, I don't like those massive BMW grills on the new 7 Series, the X7. What do you think, Rebecca?
As far as the logos?
No, the grill.
The grill itself.
Oh, the grill. Oh, I'm sorry. The grill.
We'll get to the logos.
Yeah, the grill. I don't like the new Beaver grill. I think it looks kind of ridiculous. Oh, was I not supposed to say that?
No, it's fine. I hadn't heard it called that before. It's a great mental image.
But that's what it looks like. I mean, I stole it from somebody. I can't remember now who said it, but I was like, oh my gosh, I can't unsee that now.
Yeah. And it's weird because they should make it the porcupine grill. Although with the BMW, the prick is on the inside. Always the joke. I'm sorry.
I've had 3 BMWs.
You don't count.
Not porcupines.
You don't count.
No, I think it's funny because I just finished a review of a Lexus, and I said that the grill, the front grill, was the size of a Japanese apartment because they're it's just gigantic.
Well, it makes me wonder though. I don't think this is for us. I don't think this style is for us. I think this style is for their main market, which is not the US, would be my guess.
Yeah, but I mean, in contrast, when you look at the contrast between, dare I say it, a Tesla grill and
or absence thereof,
thereof, exactly. Like it's really dramatic.
Well, but Tesla does have so they may not have grills, but they have the body contour that makes a dark area. It plays with the light where a grill would be.
It does. Yeah, it does to some extent. I mean, the Model 3, and I know we're off track, but just while we're thinking about the grill.
What we do here.
That is how we roll.
Have anywhere else to go.
So the Model 3, to me, looks like a Ninja Turtle. Like because
I can't see that now either.
Right? No, I'm not kidding. I actually put together a montage for somebody, like a collage.
Which Ninja Turtle though? Like which?
It doesn't matter because they all wear those masks. That's right.
Okay. All right.
They wear those masks and they have those little turtle eyes, and that's what the Model 3 looks like. And the very first time I saw it, I went, "Oh my gosh, it's a Ninja Turtle." So anyway, I think that there's, a very definitive expression that BMW is going for. I mean, I agree. I don't know. Okay. I didn't love it. Now, to be fair, I have not seen a lot of them in person. So maybe it looks better on the road.
Probably not.
But again, that okay, I tried.
That's good enough for them on the road.
It's not any better. But so Sam, how does it drive? Like, how does it? The thing I noticed about the 3 Series was it rotated really weird.
It rotated?
Yeah. So like when you go into a corner, it almost felt like it was trying to hurl the back end out. And it just.
Did you drive the rear drive or the all-wheel drive version?
Might have been the X. It was probably the X drive. Yeah. So probably the
So I think I didn't personally experience that, but I think that.
And I know I'm not the only one who's talked about it.
Yeah, I think that's some issues with the way they're doing the torque distribution front to rear, and trying to dynamically adjust that, to give it a little bit more, of that rear drive feel when you're going hard into a corner. And, that's a really hard thing to do, to get that, kind of smooth and seamless and natural feeling. That's why, if I was going to buy something like this, I would go for the rear drive version, because I prefer it that way rather than trying to emulate that, and trying to constantly manage this stuff, front to rear. It's, it's really hard to do that, when everything is in motion. It's one thing to do it, when you're on a skid pad, and you've got a relatively steady state condition. But the problem is the real world is never that steady state. Things are always changing. The surface conditions are changing, and it's hard to make it feel natural when you're doing that. At a little more subdued speeds, I think it drives really well. The steering feels definitely better than the last generation 3 Series, but it's still, it's not in the place where, the class like the E36 and, some of the earlier generations of 3 Series were.
Or say the Genesis G70, which seems to
G70.
Seems to have good steering feel.
Right. So, it's definitely an improvement, but it's not quite there. But overall, it's a really nice car to drive. Unfortunately, they haven't yet rolled out their support for Android Auto, which means that I had to do my media streaming, just straight up Bluetooth media streaming, and, trying to figure out how to, to pause. If I went to lunch with my wife and daughter, and, wanted to pause what was playing, and, finally figured out, just hit the volume button, basically just turn the audio off, and that pauses it. Because on the screen,
there's no pause button.
There's no pause button on the screen. So it's a little odd.
Doesn't it feel like you're putting like one of those old 78 RPM records on a Victrola when you have to do like Bluetooth now versus?
Yeah, it does. It does feel a little antiquated.
Are they still doing that? Are they still doing that crazy gesturing thing? Because really, there was only one gesture I ended up making. And it was not socially acceptable.
Oh, you mean the one that doesn't work with your central finger?
Yeah, exactly.
If you rotate it around in a circle, it should work. It should turn the volume up.
Yeah, the gesture control is included in the executive package that was on here, which is a $2,100 package that gives you auto high beams, icon adaptive LED with laser light, whatever the hell that is. I think that's the headlights.
Yeah, it's they hit an LED.
Parking
when I was an executive, I wasn't a very good one, so I guess I don't need it.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, in classic German fashion, there's some very, very expensive options on this car. I mean, the base price up for the M340 xDrive, is $56,000, which is not cheap, but
that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. But, in the competitive set, I think it's a little more reasonable. But, some of the options on here, like $2,000 for the Tanzanite blue metallic paint, I
bet it's pretty,
color, but it ain't that nice. It ain't $2,000 nice. Another $1,450 for the Oyster Vernasca leather.
But that's a really pretty combo. That that's like a dark blue, right, with oyster leather.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
And the driver's assistant pro package, which has extended traffic jam assistant, which is basically like the Pro Pilot, but it only works up to 37 kilometers an hour. So like 25 miles an hour, which, kind of got to wonder, why bother?
I don't like that. I don't like that.
Not worth it for $1,700.
Listen, when you're the executive with the laser headlights, you want to be able to pick up your iPhone and return emails in the goddamn traffic jam at the Concord Rotary.
Exactly.
The Concord Rotary.
Their system works really, really well.
But,
and that is a thing for our listeners. Oh, yeah. The Concord Rotary is a thing.
It was amazing the last 2 weeks. Let me tell you, it was like tumbleweeds going through there.
Things like the big, the M Sport brakes and the M Sport differential, those are all standard on the M340. So, actually all of the really good stuff, all the good performance stuff is included as standard at that $56,000 price.
Well, at least they have their priorities in order.
Well,
yeah, it's all the trivial stuff that you can live without.
Yeah, but isn't that? I mean, that was kind of that plays into our point earlier with the Rogue Sport. It's a very, very different vehicle, but at least you feel like for that price point, you're getting a value. You're getting something for that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not saying it's not a lot of money. I'm just saying that at least you walk away feeling okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, and this is, the option pricing is typical of what you find if you go shop for an Audi or a BMW or a Mercedes Benz, or a Volvo for that matter. Any premium model. The margins start to get very, very heavy on these option prices. So it's not crazy, compared to what you would pay from any other manufacturer. Okay. So out the door, it was just shy of $70,000.
Oh, that's a lot of money. Oh,
yeah. But it was very nice to drive.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. I can't really comment, I guess, on sort of that being a lot of money for what was their sort of mainstream sedan, given I spent the last 3 weeks in Ford's entire truck range. I did the Ranger EcoBoost, the F-150 diesel, and then just swapped out of an F-250 Lariat with the diesel. Yeah, those are expensive.
How was the diesel, though? I'm really curious.
So the F-150 diesel was fantastic. That engine is great. It's really well behaved. It's torquey. It can wind that speedometer needle around like it's, I don't know. I'm trying to come up with an analogy for a gauge that rises really quickly. Whatever. It's got a lot of torque. It's very well behaved. It's smooth and quiet and powerful. The problem is that it's also expensive. I want to say that it was almost a $60,000 truck. I don't remember off the top of my head. It was more expensive than it should have been. Well, not that it should have been, but just more expensive than.
Well, what trim level was that truck though? Was that a Lariat?
It was not a Lariat. It was an XLT with the FX4 package on it. So the diesel adds a lot of cost to it.
Yeah, I think it's about $4,000 for the diesel.
And I have trouble with the F Series and even with the Super Duties when the prices start to rise, no matter what they do, and they just can't get the cabins to feel like they're worth it. Versus the Ram, which even in less expensive trims feels like it's a lot richer. And so that is kind of offensive to me. The Ford truck itself is great. It was nice to have a pickup for a few weeks. I got some stuff done. But the thing that really hit home, two things I took away from it, because the Ranger just that's not a great deal. I cannot get behind the Ranger. It's too expensive. It's too small. It's decently efficient. It's not that refined. I liked the 2.3 liter EcoBoost. I really want to try that engine in an F-150 versus the ridiculous engines that they put in the F-150. Like I don't need to wind the speedometer needle around like so quickly. And that EcoBoost engine is just plenty powerful for an F series. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to try that out. It's not going to happen. But also the other takeaway was the F-250, which is only about, I think it was like $4,000 more than the F-150 diesel, which is weird because it was a Lariat. That's the one to buy. If you need a truck to do truck stuff, that's just skip the others and get the heavy duty one. Because it's going to have more of the features. It's going to have, it's going to be more ready to be called upon to be trucky. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just coincidentally thinking back to the trade show that I just attended in Las Vegas, where again these are construction people. These are people that these trucks are part of their toolbox. And, they're used to spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on equipment.
Sure.
And it's, when you look at some of these trucks for 70, 80, 90, $100,000, it seems outrageous. But if you're using this as they were built to be used, as they were intended to be used, it's again, it's I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that this is inexpensive. It's a lot of money. But if you're showing up to a job site with a $10 million building on it and millions of dollars worth of equipment that you own there, I can see those men and women at that trade show spending that kind of money
for sure.
the right equipment, for the right the right equipment for the job. And so, it's hard to look at these things as, these kinds of trucks at some of those price points. But, once you broaden your view and look and say, what is this for? I mean, some of those trucks are amazing. They're gorgeous, and they do a really good job.
Yeah, I don't disagree, especially with the F series. Where that feels wrong, or not wrong, but just it doesn't feel right. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying it just
good.
I have mental discontinuity about the F-150 diesel doesn't fit that. The F-250 absolutely. It's heavy enough so that it doesn't need its gross weight is high enough that there's benefits to that. And having a business pay for that has financial benefits versus having it be a personal truck. The F-150 diesel is in this weird spot where it's kind of like half of an HD truck, but not really, and it's just going to get beat to smithereens if you use it like the F-250.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the F-150 diesel, Ford will tell you that it's targeted at a very specific audience, which is basically anybody that doesn't need the towing capability of a Super Duty, and when you get into Super Duties now, you can get into up to I think almost 30,000 pounds towing capability with a fifth wheel.
That's crazy.
And even with a regular hitch, I think they're close to 20,000 pounds towing capability. But if you have towing needs up to about 9,000 or 10,000 pounds, you don't necessarily need that big truck. But if you're towing, regularly, or even just a few thousand pounds, if you're towing all the time, with an EcoBoost, if you're just driving them around regularly, they can get decent mileage. But as soon as you start putting any heavy load on that, especially towing load, the fuel economy of an EcoBoost just goes right in the toilet.
Yeah.
So if you're towing on a daily basis, like a landscaper, that's, got, a trailer that they're towing around, it might only be a couple 1,000-pound trailer. But if you're towing that thing around every day, you don't need an F-250 to do that. But having that diesel, the drop off in fuel economy with the diesel when you're towing is so much less than when you're doing that with a gas EcoBoost engine. And it makes a huge difference. Your operating costs will be so much less. Or if you have a horse trailer that you need to tow on a regular basis, that might be 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 pound trailer. You don't need a Super Duty for that. An F-150 can handle that. But if you're doing it all the time, you definitely want that diesel engine.
Sure, I can see that.
There's a niche. I mean, it's only maybe 4 or 5% of F-150 sales, but when you're talking about a vehicle that sells 500,000-600,000 units a year, that 4, 5, 6% adds up pretty fast and makes it worthwhile to do that.
That engine itself is fantastic. I hope that they use that across other vehicles in the range. It'd be great in the Transit.
I expect it'll be in the Navigator and Expedition next year, and probably in the next gen Transit.
Yeah, and the big 6.7 Power Stroke is also great. I guess what I liked was that the F-250 is a little stiffer. It was clearly more heavy duty. It just felt like a damn truck, you know? Like it was, it could handle whatever I threw at it. You know, if I wanted to put a plow on it, well, we don't recommend that you put a plow on the F-Series, on the F-150. Right. They really suggest that you use the heavy duty trucks. It had the heavier axles and hubs and all that stuff. So it just, it was if you're buying a truck to use it as a truck, that I like the F-250 and above. And it's not that much more money when you start to get that tricked out F-150. But yeah, I see your point. I guess if you're just towing your boat to go fishing on the lake every weekend or something.
Have you driven the GM trucks with their new diesel yet?
Their new diesel's a couple years old now, right?
No, it just came out last year.
Really?
The new 3-liter, the inline 6 diesel.
Oh no, the last GM diesel I drove was a V8 diesel.
Yeah, that's on the heavy duty truck,
which is also fantastic.
Yeah,
it was great. And I haven't driven the 6.
The new 1500s have this 3-liter inline 6 diesel, which is it's got the best fuel economy rating of any pickup truck, full size truck on the market today. And it's everything I've heard from people who've driven it say it's a fantastic engine. I haven't had a chance to get in it yet, but
yeah,
hopefully in the next few months.
This thing did kick back 23, 24 miles per gallon in apocalypse lack of traffic.
Is that all you got? Man,
that's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
I got 39 out of it.
What?
Oh, what?
On the launch drive, was it last year or the year before in Denver? They had a mileage loop. They were doing a little competition, and it was about a 12-mile loop, with hills, up and down hills, a little bit of freeway, some stop and go. And, they had it, I took 4 laps around this loop, and each time I managed to get it up a little higher. My best run was 39.4 miles per gallon.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Of course, I had to do some things that I wouldn't normally recommend anybody actually do when driving a vehicle, but I did them, and I pretended I was Wayne Gerdes, and it all worked out well.
Well, it's also points out that mileage is highly situational.
Yes,
and therefore, somewhat to look at it with a somewhat jaundiced eye. That's all.
Yeah.
Let's turn our jaundiced eyes to what else has been going on. We had the internet has been really important lately for car introductions because we can't get near each other. So Hyundai just released the Elantra. Was it 2021 Elantra?
Yep.
On the web last night, and it's interesting to look at. I'll give it that. It looks like a really good update, but it's following the sort of.
You sound like you don't like it.
I mostly like it. It's got a weird dent in the door. But modern see, and this is the thing that it comes back to us sort of complaining about BMW, right? Like this is the thing that happens is if they stay conservative or so traditional, they get stuck. There was really nowhere else for BMW to go after 2000, right? So the E38, E39 cars that everybody loves, they're very conservative and traditional, and that they're a BMW. And then it was a shock to the system when the Bangle stuff came out, and that even now looks conservative compared to what they're doing now. Style has gotten very busy, and this Elantra is definitely busy. It's got a lot of lines. Yes, prismatic, sure.
I am curious, staring at the pictures. This is definitely one I would like to see in person because I see what you mean about the dent in the door.
Yeah.
And it's hard to grasp it though. Because it almost looks like shadows and angles.
Well, I think that's the point.
The pictures.
I think they want to play with light.
Does it actually have a dent? Is it actually?
There's a crease. There's a body line. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So the crease goes really far down. because normally they keep the crease straight across the belt line, and it follows
so that one across the
into
belt.
the head.
No, I don't. I'm trying to remember what they call it. So the belt line is the belt line. The one that goes up across the top of the doors, I think that's the bone line. I don't know what you're going to call this one.
No, the one like the base of the base of the side glass is the belt line,
Oh, okay.
and this would be like the bone line or the tornado line.
Tornado
sometimes it's
line.
called.
Tornado line.
That's what Audi used to call it. I don't know if they still do.
Do they mean like tornado, like TOURENE, like the food?
I don't know. I never actually saw it spelled out.
No, the Toronado line is something different. Yeah. Okay, but honestly, it looks really good from most angles, and it's one of those things like, hey, at least they're trying something. I'll give them a pass till I see one in person, and then I'm sure I'll have crap to say about it. But that's not really the important part. Is not how it looks. It's sort of all of the other stuff that they've done to maintain their sort of market. I don't know if they have a lead. They probably still don't quite sell as many as Honda or Toyota or anything, but
the Civic and Corolla are definitely the two top sellers in this C segment.
But we talk about the Hyundais more. I feel. I don't know. Maybe it's just us.
Well, I feel like I have more access to Hyundai.
Well, that's a good point, automakers.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this thing's like 2.5 inches longer than the old one. An extra inch of wheelbase, a little bit less overhang on the front, a little more on the rear. It's definitely got some interesting styling on the exterior.
I actually don't mind the grille for some reason.
No, I think the grille's actually done pretty well on this one.
Yeah, but it's
very,
pretty
very similar to the new Sonata.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's pretty cool looking. I mean, and I'm sorry, I totally interrupted you.
No, it's all right.
Continue.
It is a big grill. Yeah, Rebecca keeps talking all over Sam. Let him speak. What do you think of the interior?
Well, I was still hung up on the exterior. I really like the roofline, the C-pillar, and the back end really looks good. I mean, I think overall it's a really nicely styled car. I
feel like it looks more expensive than it is. I mean, it looks very high style.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what they're aiming for, is to at least make it look more upmarket. And again, it's part of trying to create the perception of value for your money.
Yeah, the interior wise, like it doesn't blow my hair back. Most of the pictures I'm seeing are of a all black interior, which is always no fun. Some of the detailing is really nice. I like
it does have that unique corner and grab handle for the passenger.
Yeah. I see that. Yeah,
that's literally the phrase in the press release.
Is it really?
Unique corner and grab handle.
Why?
What?
But the Elantra has never been that kind of car. It's never been
awesome.
It's always handled kind of greasy and not enthusiastically. And
greasy.
The Elantra GT, has definitely been better than the sedans. And the GTs have had, a multi-link rear suspension, which is what the sedan has now too. It also has the multi-link rear suspension.
Okay, so I just found on a slide 34 of 38 pictures, I finally found a full frontal view of the interior. I'm not a fan of that divider line that they have there.
The thing that looks like a stereo, like a 70s hi-fi?
No, maybe that's where that grab handle thing is, but it's to the left of the passenger, and to the right, the center of the center
is the corner and grab handle.
That's the unique. That's the unique corner and grab handle. Don't forget the word unique.
Is it unique or very unique? I like when we qualify how unique something is, because it really doesn't.
Well, they don't they don't use unique. They only call it unique. They don't use the very. It's only unique.
What they also,
I don't love it.
They slap you in the face with how cheap you are if you don't buy the big screen either. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a difference there. So, the up level setup has a 10.5 inch or 10 and a quarter inch touchscreen in the center, And then there's also a 10.25 inch cluster display, and they're both under a common sheet of glass all the way across. And then if you go for the base setup, you get, I think it's a 7 or 8 inch touchscreen. And, instead of being under, this one sheet of glass all the way across, it's got fairly prominent bezels around it. And it doesn't have quite the same effect.
It looks like an
same impact.
ATM machine or something. It's just, I guess ATM machines were done, but it looks like it's bad. That's not good. And maybe part of it is like, hey, cheapskate, you should buy the good one. And does the instrument panel extend to the left of the?
That's what I've been trying to figure out. I watched the reveal video, and I read all the releases, and I can't quite figure out what that is to the left of the instrument cluster.
Okay. Or is it almost looks like it could be a vent, but I don't know.
Well, no, the vent's down below that. I mean, it looks like there's another touchscreen there.
Yeah. So, guys, this is ridiculous. Stop this. Not necessary. And it's a Hyundai, so it's going to be too bright at night. And now it's all in front of you, and you can't shut it off because it's got important stuff on it. Oh well.
You sound very annoyed.
I'm defeated.
This panel to the left of the cluster, all the images just have this dashed circle around it with a horizontal line in the middle of it. So it's not clear. Maybe, I don't know.
For the unique corner and grab handle.
But during the presentation, they had Albert Bierman come out and talk, and he did say that there is going to be an N-line version of this coming. Which will be nice.
That's good. And they did actually, importantly, they introduced the first Elantra hybrid, which gets 50 miles to the gallon, right?
Yeah, and I mean it's the same powertrain that's in the Ioniq. So same 1.6 liter with a DCT, 32 kilowatt electric motor, which is it's a good powertrain. I mean, it's really good in the Ioniq and in the Niro. And it's supposed to get about 50 miles per gallon, at least 50 miles per gallon in this thing.
Well, the thing that I like about the Hyundai hybrid implementation is that they still use a conventional transmission on it instead of a CVT. So it feels a lot better, more positive from behind the wheel, I think. Just more normal. So that's pleasing to drive. And hopefully with a guy like Albert Bierman maybe tuning the chassis, this one won't handle greasy.
That's so cool.
It just came down to tire choices and stuff. The last Elantra I drove was a good car, but it just wasn't. It was it was no Jetta or GTI.
And by greasy, you don't mean slick.
No, I just it didn't have enough grip.
Slick in the wrong ways.
Exactly, in all the wrong ways.
Not enough grip. Bad tire choice. We went with the high miles tires instead of the grippy tires, and roll rates.
Well, that's what the N-line is for.
Roll rates that don't match and stuff. And it's all the other N-line cars or car. I'm trying to remember if there's more than one. I know that the N-line Velosters are quite a lot of.
Yeah, there's a Veloster. There's an Elantra GT N-line, I think, and also the there's going to be a Sonata N-line.
Okay,
a new Sonata.
Good for them. I mean, keep bringing the nicely designed cars with lots of equipment and good economy and high performance versions.
I talked to Miles. And I talked to Miles Johnson today. One thing they didn't mention in the release is when it's coming out. He said production is going to start in the fall, and it'll be available here in the U.S. Depending on what happens, obviously. But the plan is it will be available in the fourth quarter, and the gas engine launches, and then a few weeks later, the hybrid will be available.
Okay. The biggest takeaway from the release for the interior is that the two-toned melange emphasizes the driver-focused layout, even on the door. That's their final bullet point, which I don't understand. Okay. They use the word melange.
But it will. That's not a word you want to
Not-
use in this kind of
melange,
context. I
not-
don't think.
It's okay. It's not the one you're thinking.
But it will have wireless CarPlay and Android Auto support as well. So
I just like to point out that we're on like day 2 of quarantine.
Oh no, I've been home
just-
since Friday. This is now Wednesday.
I've been home since the Chicago Auto Show.
Okay, well, I mean, in terms of self-isolation.
Yeah, you were in Vegas until like
We're only
yesterday.
going a little stir
Yeah,
crazy.
you are quarantined. We're just sheltering
Right. We're
sheltering in place.
I'm gonna go get my
Oh my gosh.
emergency biscuits in the can.
Yeah,
Civil
fair
defense
warning for next
biscuits.
podcast. Fair warning for next podcast is all I'm saying.
Yeah, Rebecca's going to be be a little stir crazy next week.
Yeah. Me?
Yeah.
I was thinking of Dan.
No,
Well, Dan's always.
the worst part is rationing the chocolate. You know, like
Yeah.
it's like you can have one piece.
Well, CVS has plenty of Easter candy, just an FYI for you.
I can't. I haven't.
I've heard.
CVS is like there's sick people there.
Anyway,
Yeah, last episode, because we put it together, with you and I talking, and then Rebecca and I talking about what happened at GM and their EV day. You didn't really get a chance to weigh in, so I think you had some thoughts about GM's EV strategy.
So the GM EV strategy, to me, like I'm sure the cars are going to be good, but looking at it, it almost feels like a copycat rollout because they're starting with that luxury brand first. I think the first one is going to be a Hummer. You were saying that we're going to see.
Yeah, the Hummer EV the Hummer pickup will be the first one out the door, followed by the Lyriq, and then a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, Cadillac. Poor Cadillac with the names. Why do this to yourself? But they're coming out, and I understand to a degree that that's just how it's done with EV launches, and that's how it has been done. Is you start with the expensive stuff. Part of that has been because the smaller automakers have led the way on that, and the only way that they were able to sort of be viable was to lead with their production numbers were much lower, so their cars were naturally more expensive, and then you want to get those premium early adopters in the door, and so that's why you had stuff like the Model S. So for GM to follow that path, though, seems like they could have gone another way and grabbed actually more of the opportunity in the market, which is coming later, but would probably have made a bigger impression or given them something to talk about more if they were to say, you know what, we're going to actually bring you a $20,000 EV or $25,000 EV. It's going to be a Chevy. Chevy has more... it's just a more applicable name to everybody versus Cadillac, which is it's a premium nameplate. Even now, it's not everybody is interested in Cadillac. More people are going to be interested in the cheap Chevy EV that's going to be built well. You can get it down the street, and service is going to be easy. It's going to be just like your normal car, except for it's going to be electric versus this exotic thing. So.
Well, I mean, that's what the Bolt is, except it's not $20,000.
Yeah, and
unless you buy one that's 2 years old.
The Bolt is great. I love the Bolt. The Bolt hasn't really seemed to. They haven't really tried to let everybody know that the Bolt is there. I guess is my point.
No, that's an excellent point. It hasn't really been marketed much.
But the thing is, though, that if you look at the technology adoption curve, and the early adopters, they don't want a Chevy. That's been the whole problem all along.
But do you think they want a Cadillac?
Yes,
sure?
they would rather. They would rather have a Cadillac than a Chevy because they're risk takers. They're luxury oriented. It's a very, very different buyer. They don't trust GM or Chevrolet for technology. That's the biggest problem. Is that they're more apt to trust that GM has put their best and brightest on a Cadillac than on a Chevy.
Okay, I can see that.
I think there's probably the perception that if they put high tech into a Chevy, that they've cut corners somewhere.
Right.
But see, I think that perception is still there with Cadillac too, though. Like Cadillac is,
it's less so.
I'm having trouble, I guess, reconciling like the buyer who's interested in, say, Tesla or Rivian or one of the other myriad luxury EV brands actually being interested in a Cadillac.
Well, it's a very different, it's, I know what you mean. I totally understand what you mean, but they're going to be far more interested in a Cadillac than in a Chevy, which is and I mean this in a positive way, but it's a domestically oriented blue collar brand.
I can see
and
that.
That's
the other thing
that's
too
not where
is,
you go for the latest technology.
I think where GM, what GM's doing here is they're not necessarily looking to grab those Tesla buyers, because I think everyone, or most people have recognized that the Tesla fans aren't even really going to consider any other brand.
Tesla buyers are going to buy Teslas. They're like the Apple people were.
Right. They're gone. They were available. They were up for grabs, but they're not anymore.
So what they need to do is create a next generation Cadillac. Create something that other customers are going to be interested in. That also happens to be electric. I mean, this is the approach that Audi took with the e-tron,
which I love. By the way. I think that does a fantastic.
It is. But I think, especially here in North America, I'd say less so in Europe, because the e-tron's actually done quite well in markets like Norway and the Netherlands, where Audi or Tesla was really strong. They actually have taken buyers away from Tesla, but the e-tron, the first e-tron is basically it's an Audi utility. It's not, aside from being electric, all other aspects of that vehicle are not dramatically different from a Q5 or a Q7 or a Q8. And somebody that wants an Audi and loves an Audi but wants to go electric, that's a great vehicle.
Yeah,
for them.
well, and that's what I was thinking. Like, I see your point, Rebecca, where you don't go to Chevy for the latest and greatest tech. But what if it wasn't because of the latest and greatest tech? It was just because it's an EV and it doesn't have to have an enormous portrait display and just like all of that, self-parking stuff.
But EV is still for 90. What is it? 98% of the market, EV still is a risk. It's perceived as a risk. That technology is new.
Battery EVs, in the U.S. account for about overall, less than 1.5% of sales.
Because this is the other thing that worries me about GM. Anytime they roll out a new model, it's like all the things they want to do are not quite ready. Or they try to like reinvent so much. Look how ambitious they got with like the Corvair, the Vega, the X car.
No, but the Volt, both the Volt and the Bolt were very, very good vehicles. They really were.
And, in this case, this is not their first swing at the bat with this. You're right. The Corvair and some other previous
amazing engineering. Amazing.
Right. But they were the first ones out the door. What we're talking about here, depending on how you add it up, in GM's parlance, this is their third generation EV, and with the EV1 being the first generation and the Bolt being Gen 2, you also had as the Bolt was Gen 2, the Volt in there as well. So, they, especially the last, 13, 14 years, they've been hard at work on this electric stuff, and, continuously, and they've gone through multiple iterations. So, this is not all new. I mean, it's new. It's all new in that it's a new generation, but it's all based on the stuff that they've been learning over the last dozen years.
Like the tech, the engineering sounds badass. A 22-pound motor that makes 200 pound-feet of torque or something like that. I forget the exact numbers, but that was really impressive to me. The
and the
batteries,
battery,
the prismatic battery. They're not prismatic; they're pouch cells, right? But they could go prismatic if they wanted to pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see variants in various markets that have prismatic cells. You might even see some with cylindrical cells in certain markets, mostly in China, probably. But the thing is, the module design can accommodate any type of cell, and the overall pack design can is agnostic to the cell type that's in the module.
So that's really smart thinking, and that's the kind of stuff that GM has always been good at, is that smart thinking, forward thinking engineering that is less of a, it's less easy to grasp than the tech. So I guess I can see the sort of in-car tech, like the screens and like the Cadillac stuff with the giant LEDs that are curved and stuff. All that's cool, and that's not the Lyriq necessarily. That's just the Escalade, but I can see. I guess I can see how they want to have a conversation piece and push that along, and have the EV tech sort of be the underpinning. This sort of, oh, by the way, and then once they've established their reputation, hopefully it trickles down.
And the other, there are going to be Chevrolets and Buicks, following very close behind. I mean, it's not like we're going to be waiting another 5, 6, 7 years to get new electric Chevys. These are all going to be coming between now and 2023.
I'm excited. I just, it gave me pause, maybe scratch my head. I do think that the Hummer, there's going to be pent up demand for that. Just looking at the excitement around both the Cybertruck and the Rivian R1T. If GM can hit the market with that before the other two, I think they'll actually have something worth growing.
And there's a Chevy pickup, that's part of this batch of 20. That for fans of the old Avalanche, you'll want to be looking for this Chevy pickup. It's designed, is very much a callback to the Avalanche, except it's electric.
All right. What about the Aztec? They put any Aztec stuff in there?
Not that they showed us.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely not.
All right, I've said my piece. I'm good.
Pontiac Aztec by Buick.
Isuzu Opel built by Isuzu, sold by, well, that was sold by Buick too. I've said my piece. That's I do wonder, because it's the last sort of thought I had was like, all these things are skateboard chassis, and so it almost makes me feel like body on frame has come back, but it's not the same.
It's different. It is, but it's different.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to watch. I think that maybe this time around, I am encouraged that this time around GM can make something that sticks, and they still got to figure Cadillac out, though. I don't know.
Well, they do need to figure out Cadillac, and hopefully this will be one of the ways that they can do that.
I hope so. You sound more optimistic than I do.
What a shock.
What are you implying?
We've got a backlog of listener letters. We've been asking people for letters, and they've been sending them, and we haven't been responding to them. We've been bad hosts.
Yeah.
And this one here from LJ. Okay. I could not agree with you more on the abysmal performance of the Uconnect system. I regularly rent cars, sometimes up to a month, and have an opportunity to try different brands. The latest version of Uconnect is so unusable that I would not purchase a Chrysler product for this reason alone. I'm spending the month in Palm Springs and got a pretty good rate on a pickup. Unfortunately, it wouldn't fit in the garage of my rental house, so I had to swap it out for a minivan. They both suffered with the same issue on startup. It takes a full 30 seconds before the vehicle hooks up with the phone. During that time, Uconnect cannot find the phone, so it switches over to the radio. Since the signal levels vary, the radio ends up blasting. The only way to prevent this is to toggle the media button until the auxiliary selection becomes available. At some point during this whole process, the media begins playing on your device, so by the time it's available for the vehicle, you've missed 15 or 20 seconds of content. I don't want to live in a world where I miss a single second of wheel bearings. Well, thank you, LJ. Wow. We appreciate that.
That's nice.
That's awesome.
So, it goes on a little bit, but this is actually not a problem that's unique to Uconnect, and in fact, this is something I neglected to mention with the Rogue Sport. The infotainment in that system also took a while to reconnect the phone to it. It has CarPlay and Android Auto. But it took a while to reconnect, and for some reason, while it's waiting to connect the phone, it always seemed to revert to like XM satellite radio, and at a really high volume, which I found really annoying. I actually, it's been quite a few months since I had any Chrysler vehicles or FCA vehicles, but I don't recall this being that much of a problem with Uconnect. Did you have a problem with this, Dan, when you had the Ram recently, or Rebecca?
I don't recall it being a problem.
I did not like the Uconnect in the RAM. It was hard to figure out at first. I don't recall
that the 12-inch system.
It was the big screen, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't recall it having that sort of like, right, the like real prominent kind of startup morning sickness or whatever. But that's also not unique to Uconnect. Volvos do it where it takes it a while to start up and actually start to be responsive. It's very laggy. A few cars are like that.
Yeah, Volvos are quite slow with that.
And then once 5 minutes in, it's okay, but it takes forever to get to that point. So I think that kind of thing, that performance issue, will smooth out as they make these systems with newer hardware. We've talked about this before. The automotive grade hardware is not necessarily the fastest or most powerful. So that's one wrinkle. And I think they're asking a lot of it to drive these big displays and do all this nonsense that's completely unnecessary, but seemingly people want. So I understand. If I were spending my own money, I would probably not buy the uprated audio system either. And even it's like we were talking about that Elantra. I'd still buy the one with the stupid looking little screen because I don't want the giant touch screen, even though that one's probably not bad. It's going to be an issue. Like, they're not going to listen to us.
Yeah. Okay. So next up, we got Michael Silvestro Jr. With Hyundai's 7-speed DCT. Says, I've got a 2017 Elantra Eco with the 7-speed DCT. I hear all three of you praise Hyundai. What's your impression of their transmissions? Mine was replaced at 29,000 miles. Is in the shop with 44,000 miles for a failure to shift. He's saying that this is a common problem with these transmissions. I have never, granted, I have never spent that long in a Hyundai with that 7-speed DCT. My experience driving it, great to drive. The ownership experience is another matter. I have, like I said, I've never spent more than a week at a time with any of these. Have you guys experienced any issues when you've been driving any Hyundais with the 7-speed?
That's another one where it's been a while since I've had a Hyundai with the DCT. I don't generally tend to like dual clutch transmissions just because I'm terrified of the ownership experience, and most of them don't operate any better than a conventional, hydraulic automatic. So I don't really see the point other than weight and cost, I guess.
What year was his vehicle?
2017.
So I just did a quick search, and online there are some issues apparently with, I don't know if it's the same one. Late in 2016, there was a lawsuit filed actually on Hyundais with the 7-speed transmission have control modules that misbehave due to high temperature in certain driving conditions.
Okay, well, that may be what he's experiencing here. So it sounds like there have been some issues with this particular transmission. I don't know about the 6-speed. For what it's worth, the new Elantra and other recent, some other recent Hyundai and Kia models have actually been moving away from this DCT. So that could be a sign that they were having issues with it. It certainly, these transmissions, drive pretty well. As DCTs go, these are among the best I've driven in terms of their general operating characteristics. Much better than the Ford PowerShift DCTs, and even the Volkswagen DSG gearboxes. So I've definitely liked driving them, but it sounds like there may be some reliability issues with them. And the new Elantra. Oh, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. It sounds like there's a software potential for a software upgrade.
Okay.
Just glancing at things that. So somebody writes, once my 2016 Tucson had the software update in May of 2017, it's worked very well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the new one is going to CVTs now. So they're dropping these DCTs and moving to CVTs instead.
Yeah, I don't know which is worse. That has always been sort of a back of my mind issue with the dual clutch transmission, though, is just wear and longevity. This is a wet clutch transmission, right? Like it's very much like
it's a dry clutch.
Is it a dry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Hyundai DCTs are dry clutch. Only Volkswagen has done the wet clutch.
Okay.
The wet clutch are not quite as efficient and they're considerably more expensive.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why Volkswagen did it.
All right. Let's move on. Burnstar 2, writing in from the Gold Coast in Queensland. Seriously beautiful part of the world. Thanks for the show. I thought this might be a good topic for discussion. Would love to hear your thoughts. GM's decision this week to fully cease production of the Holden brand in 2021, 2 years after shutting down local manufacturing. So, yeah, they shut down local production in 2019, and they're still importing various GM models from Europe and North America rebadged as Holdens. So things like the Insignia / Regal are available as a Holden right now, but the Holden brand is going away entirely next year. So I said there's a sense of national mourning over the loss of an iconic brand dating to the 1930s. His family only ever owned Holdens when he was a kid growing up in the 60s and 70s. Dismay that GM reportedly told nobody, not even the Prime Minister's office, before making the announcement, which affects up to 800 jobs and potentially more downstream in the dealerships. And outraged that the Australian car industry has been allowed to wither by manufacturers, governments, et cetera, et cetera. The reality is that Australians switched to buying Japanese, Korean, and European cars many years ago. So we've really reached just. Have we really reached just an inevitable and unsurprising conclusion? It shows that our cars mean more to a society than just horsepower or kilowatts, whether they're electric or ICE, and how much they cost. In the end, it's a consumer's choice on whether they spend their money, and that really decides what stays and what goes.
Well, it is a shame because having been to Queensland and have a very good friend from there, the Holden brand, it is a shame because they gave us the amazing Pontiac GTO fairly recently,
and the Chevy SS
and the Pontiac G8.
Pontiac G8,
yeah.
We almost got the Utes. We almost got the G8.
Oh, that would have been so fun.
Yeah.
So it is a good question. At what point does an automaker feel obligated to subsidize national pride? Like that's because how much does it cost to keep a brand open? Even if they're just rebadging vehicles, that's essentially where they got to, right? It costs money to run a separate brand. And if the brand itself is to the point where it just doesn't have any market share anyway, what point does it make? So from the business side, I can see it.
And the challenge for GM, is at the same time they made this announcement of discontinuing the Holden brand, they also said, that they're pulling out of all right-hand drive markets. And this is one of the challenges for Australia, being a right-hand drive market, because GM, a couple of years ago sold off Opel and Vauxhall in Europe, and most of the engineering, most of the Holden vehicles of late have been based on Opel designs, that were rebadged. They were essentially Vauxhalls, which are right-hand drive Opels sold in the UK. So, with GM deciding to get out of the right-hand drive vehicle business, aside from the Corvette, what else can they sell? They didn't really have anything else to do in Australia because it's just not a large enough market for them to justify the engineering costs for, a full range of vehicles.
Yeah, I think what I saw was that they sell more cars in Texas in less than a year than they did in Australia for the entire year. Like,
yeah,
it just economically gets real upside down. And so I can understand the sadness. I still miss Oldsmobile, man. Like, but at the end of the day, it's a brand of thing, you know. I know that there's, again, it's your brand, and I understand that too. So I don't want to minimize the emotions, but I can't see that GM had a real solid business case for keeping it around.
Yeah, and for better for worse, that's been a hallmark of Mary Barra's reign at GM. It's you got to make a good business case for it.
And with all the money that they have to invest in electrification, automation, and other future technologies, she's got to make some tough choices. Where do we put the resources? And in light of what's happening right now that we started the show with, that's probably the right decision to make because you can't just go on spending good money after bad. No matter how much you might like a market or a brand, if it's not working, you got to move on. That's business.
Yeah, but we absolutely mourn with you, dear listener.
Yeah, you tie off the bleeders.
That's right.
Well, but I mean, it is a shame. It's just a reality.
It is.
It's a shame.
It is.
If Australia, was a left-hand drive market, then I suspect that GM would still be selling, would continue to sell vehicles there. I mean, if it was just a matter of maintaining the Holden brand for Australia, I think that they would go with that. That wouldn't be a problem if they didn't also have to re-engineer the cars so much for that market.
Right. I agree with you.
All right. Next one from David Harbin. Which family car goes to the kids? Greetings to all of you. Have enjoyed the show since the Autoblog days. Question for your input. We're a family of 5, mom, dad, and 3 daughters aged 17, 14, and 8. The 17-year-old needs to learn to drive, and we're only a couple of years away for the 14-year-old. We have 3 cars in the fleet. Which one should be the kid car? Number 1, 2013 Chrysler Town & Country, used for mom's work and family road trips, and will probably stay mom's car since it's cushy and has satellite radio, properties that she likes. 2008 Mazda 5, the beater that does odd jobs, but in excellent mechanical condition. By the way, big fan of the Mazda 5. I think, great little minivan, in a more reasonable size than the bigger minivans we have today. And then number 3, 2017 VW GTI manual transmission, dad's car to do school runs and get to work. So conventional wisdom is probably give the old Mazda to the kids, but drawbacks to that include no stability control, seems a step down on solidity and safety compared to the others. It's an automatic, and the kids will never learn to drive manual if they don't learn now. Is it crazy to consider the GTI as the kids' car? It seems to have more safety tech than the Mazda, and other benefits include the manual transmission. Both girls want to be able to drive and travel overseas, though we know the days of manual are numbered. On the other hand, a powerful car like a GTI for a teenager is probably a terrible idea, though neither of the girls are risk takers. I think default advice for engineers is to get a used Forester or Accord, though I think the paid-for Mazda would be pretty much the same. Any thoughts?
Oh, I have thoughts.
Really? I can't imagine.
Thought away.
So I think that the safety equipment, the solidity, and the both passive and active safety, put them in the GTI. I know it's a GTI and it's relatively powerful and it handles well and stuff. I do wonder if you can get a tuner, and actually detune it, because it's easy to find tunes for those to make them quicker. So maybe you can find one that makes it more responsible. I don't know. But the the rule for me is always put them in the newest car with the newest safety tech. And that's the safest car you own, is that GTI.
Yeah. And I think that there's a couple rules I would implement as well. I don't let the boyfriends drive it. Right?
Yeah, that's a
Excellent.
good idea.
Excellent.
Right. And also, while he is teaching them the manual transmission, he can teach them about the vehicle. Take that opportunity to teach them about the torque and the power and and driving a vehicle like that. I love the fact that the girls want to learn manual. I think that's awesome. So it really can be an opportunity to educate them on this type of vehicle rather than have them feel like they're not allowed to drive it or that they can't handle it. This is such a great opportunity to teach them how to handle it. And I apologize. Lucy has come to visit, so you may hear meowing in the background because she has an opinion about this too. Go girls, learn manual.
I think that's a good point. And teaching car control, the GTI is a really benign platform for learning car control, and some driving school. Not to get overconfident, but to just understand what it feels like in a controlled environment when you start to lose, you run out to the edge of your grip and stuff. That's really important because young drivers don't know what that situation feels like. They don't have the experience. And the only way to get that experience is to be in those situations. You're not going to get it any other way. And if you are familiar with the sensation, you're going to be less flustered and you're going to know more what to do. And if you practice enough, you'll just have muscle memory and you'll just counter steer.
I agree totally with everything you've said. And I think, because, you're talking about all girls, while it's obviously a stereotype, teenage girls, I think in general are generally more responsible than teenage boys. So I think, and the GTI doesn't have a ridiculous amount of power. It's not like giving them a Mustang GT to drive. It's 210, 220 horsepower. So it's got plenty of performance, but not a crazy amount. And if they do have to, if they're learning to drive a manual, then I think that they want to do that, then I think that they're generally going to be a little more responsible. And, plus, GTIs, smaller, carries fewer people than the Mini and the Mazda 5, so I think, the fewer of their friends that they're driving around with, is also a better thing, compared to, hauling, having them haul everybody around. So I know Rebecca wants to go get some dinner, so let's just
my stomach's like
which I admit is what I was ordering when we were talking about the BMWs.
Okay.
What did you order?
So I was momentarily distracted, which I apologize for.
Okay, so one quickie here, and then one more question. Peter from Bavaria just wanted to let us know that his wife enjoys her 2010 VW Bus T5 TDI.
Why are you doing that to us?
I know, right? Come on.
And he drives a
Peter
2010 Toyota Auris and various Deutz tractors. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. He's a social scientist, social worker, farmer, and car mechanic with deep roots in the car industry. Listens to Wheel Bearings on his Android phone in the car, and hasn't missed a single episode. Peter, thank you so much for listening from Germany.
That's awesome. Thank you.
This is the last question for this week. We'll get into some more next time. But the last question I want you guys to address from Mike Feldman, a longtime listener, et cetera, et cetera. Rebecca is a wonderful addition to Wheel Bearings with a great perspective to complement Dan and Sam.
I'm glad to know he got my check.
On the last episode, you briefly got into used EVs when talking about the Model 3. I'm shopping to replace a 2016 Ford Fusion for my commute car, 80 miles and about 1.5 hours in the car a day. Fusion is pretty composed and quiet, but I find the driver's seat to be uncomfortable in my long commute. I've been looking at things like a used Lexus GS to Mazda CX-5, but EVs intrigue me too. Could a used Leaf, Bolt, etc. meet my needs for a smooth, quiet, comfortable highway commuter? I worry that these smaller cars are really just meant as urban runabouts. So first, I'll just say that, the Leaf and the Bolt, definitely, especially if you're talking second generation Leaf, more so than the first gen. Second gen, they started at 150 miles of range. Bolt's got 240. Definitely much better than urban runabouts. They would be fine for highway commutes. The seat comfort thing, though, that's something that I think is very personal to every individual, and depends a lot on your body and your body shape. Some people find the seats in the Bolt not very comfortable. I personally don't have a problem with them. I think you need to go out and try each one of these, take it for a test drive, spend at least a half hour in it if you can, and see how your back feels, riding on those seats, before you make a decision.
How long did he say his commute is?
An hour and a half a day, about 80 miles.
Okay. Well, it's interesting.
I'm assuming that's round trip.
Yeah, right. I just wrote my LS 500 review for a Lexus, and I actually specifically mentioned how comfortable it was on the highway. I mean, I would lean towards a luxury car because I think that they have a lot more opportunity to adjust that seat, and for a commute like that. I mean, I used to have a 75 miles each way, and I had an Acura Integra at the time. And while that wasn't, the height of luxury by any means, I think that I think that EV seat, I agree. I think it would wear on you after a while. And I like how many different ways that you can arrange a seat in a luxury vehicle, especially like Lincoln. What is it, like 57 different ways?
None of them comfortable.
So
see, this is what I was talking about, Dan.
Some of those minute adjustments, like, I mean, this was a little bit more extreme, but I remember driving the Volvo XC40 to and from Pennsylvania, which was about 7 hours in a day. And man, by the end of that, I was definitely feeling that seat. And obviously that's an extreme version of it. But I do think that, a well-equipped, properly bolstered luxury vehicle seat is going to be more comfortable and a lot less tiring too, on the body.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I've always really liked the seats in Acuras and like in the Accord and even the Civic. So I think Honda does some really great seats.
For sure.
Again, it's really a very personal thing. It's got to fit your particular body.
Absolutely.
And the only way to know is to actually go out and try them. The used Lexus GX or CX5, both really good choices. Again, Leaf and Bolt. If you've got an 80-mile round trip, either of those are going to handle that without any problem at all, even in wintertime.
Yeah, I think I'd go Bolt though. Like the other thing to do is just drive it and see, how loud it seems to you, because whether or not it's actually a quiet car, it depends on the quality of the noise, too. So don't forget to just spend some time with them, like you say. Like the Bolt is newer, and the Leaf has been updated even in its second generation. It just it's a little bit older on the market, and I think I would feel better with if it's 80 miles. See, I'm thinking like even if it's an 80-mile round trip, you've got that extra little bit of range with the Bolt. Actually, extra considerable amount of range. So you don't have to worry in the winter if you get stuck in traffic or whatever. Like you're not going to.
And Mike's in West Michigan, so he is going to have winter weather to deal with. And you're going to, with an EV, you're going to lose about 30 to 40% of your range in the wintertime. So
there's not a whole lot of traffic out in Western Michigan, though, right? Like
depends where he's driving. I mean, it could be fairly significant.
Okay.
I think I agree. I think that's just too long for an EV.
Not for a Bolt. Leaf.
Bolt is what?
The Leaf might,
for a Leaf specifically, but I don't know.
Yeah, the Bolt, you got 240 miles of range. You're going to have more than enough buffer. That's not going to be a problem at all.
Right.
Even worst case conditions, that you're going to have at least 140 to 150 miles of range, even in the worst of winter weather.
Well, part of it
but
too
the Leaf is not ideal.
Can you charge at work or not? If you can charge at work, then either is going to work.
Yeah, if you got workplace charging, then that definitely helps. So, but really, I think you need to go try each one of these that you're considering and see what actually works for your body shape.
Okay.
All right. And we've still got more. We will get to them next week or the week after, or when we get to them, especially Tony Mastras and what's up with ugly trucks. And and to Tony G, I'm still working on aftermarket tire pressure monitoring. Still trying to research that. So I will get you a response on that.
All right. Well, hey, everybody, thanks for listening. Stay safe out there or in there or wherever you are. Don't go licking doorknobs. And
don't forget to wash your hands.
Yeah. Wash your damn hands. Stay in your house.
And listen to podcasts like ours.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Wheel Bearings. Find us at wheelbearings.media and on Twitter as @WheelBearingsCast. Remember, there's only one vowel, that's the A in cast. We're also at Car Review Tweets on Twitter, or you could just email us. That's feedback@wheelbearings.media.